Bradshaw from Cruiser Customizing.
Beck with WWGe Distributing.
On this week's Wednesday with Greg, we want to talk about all of the fluids that you should check before you get on your bike to ride this spring. Most people check brake fluid and oil, and that's usually just about where it stops.
Yeah, but you know, there's a couple other fluids to pay attention to. One, the radiator fluid. Two, battery electrolyte level. If you have a maintenance type battery, you better check that. If you boil out the water, you're stuck.
Definitely a dead battery for sure.
Yeah.
Something else to take a look at, if you ride a big Harley Davidson, you're going to have transmission fluid, which is different than what's in your motor, as well as primary fluid.
Not just a big Harley, Sportsters too. The gearbox, oil, the engine oil, and the primary oil are all separate and different.
If you run low on those, you could run into a world of hurt.
Yeah, you could have a wonderful engine that goes to a clunky gearbox because it ran out of oil and you weren't paying attention.
Now speaking of gearboxes, if you're riding a metric that has a drive shaft, that rear differential actually has a ring and pinion setup much similar to the ring and pinion in the axle of your car or truck. And that oil is imperative as well. If you have never had that changed, I'd recommend that you do so.
And pay attention. Make sure it's the right kind of oil. If it's a hypoid type oil, make sure that's what it's replaced with. And you can tell hypoid oil because it stinks really, really bad. But it has a much, much, much higher shear strength than a regular oil. And when you have a ring and pinion, that's a lot of shear. It needs a special oil. Well, let's talk about radiator fluid. How many kinds of radiator fluid is there?
Oh,
well, there's water. By itself is okay. But when you add like a water wetter, that's a brand name, what that does is that adds a little bit more lubricity to the water so the water pump has some kind of lubrication. Pay attention. If you use those and it gets cold out at night, freezes, could be in your garage still, but it could freeze, and you go out the next morning, you're going to go riding because it's clear out, and you hit the starter button, guess what? If that water around your water pump is frozen and you hit the starter button, it's probably going to shear the gear off of the water pump. Track day guys find that out when they're required to take the lubricant out, you know, like antifreeze, and they got the bike in the back of the pickup overnight at the hotel. They go out to the racetrack, they hit the starter, done, not good. If you use a antifreeze type, there's a couple of types. There's the kind that's pre-diluted, and then there's full strength. Full strength is not good. You should use probably 50-50. If you get the pre-diluted, don't go 50-50 because it's already 50-50. Pay attention, know what you're buying.
Another type of fluid, which is commonly referred to as a lube and isn't really an oil, would be what you do to your chain.
If you have an O-ring type chain, which was invented in the mid to late 70s, the reason they did that is so you didn't have to lube your chain. But you do have to treat it with a chain treatment. Some people will say, well, it's going to wear out real fast if you don't lube it. Wrong. It won't. The oil, the grease, is packaged by the manufacturer in the axles of the chain and has an O-ring, that's why they call it O-ring chain, that keeps it in there. What makes you think you're going to spray something on there? It's going to get past that into the area that needs to be lubricated. Not going to happen. But what you don't want to have happen is oxidation, rust, to rust your chain. You can see that easily when your chain's really dirty. When your sprockets get dirty, a proper, like a DuPont, chain treatment probably put on the chain will make your chain last for a long, long, long time. And I've never worn out a chain using that method.
And there you got a couple of the imperative lubes and fluids you need to take a look at before hitting the road this spring. Thank you for watching this week's Wednesday with Greg.
And ride safe.